Welcome to Talent Unfiltered, located at the intersection of innovation and all things talent. Talent Unfiltered is presented by HireWorks. HireWorks, talent forward. Now, here is your host, Ron Godier. Welcome to Talent Unfiltered, located at the intersection of innovation and all things talent. Talent Unfiltered is presented by HireWorks. HireWorks, talent forward. Now, here is your host, Ron Godier.
It is Monday, April 20th, 2020. Welcome to Talent Unfiltered, presented by HireWorks. I am Ron Godier, and you are catching a glimpse of Atlanta, Georgia, and that's provided by the good folks over at earthcams.com. What a great town. What you're looking at there is the Skyview Atlanta Ferris wheel, and that is down off of Lucky Street. I believe one of my favorite names of a street in the entire United States. Atlanta is also one of the first major metropolitan areas to open back up for business. They did that last week on a limited scale. Now, regardless of how you feel about that, Atlanta is a great town. Another great town is where I live, which is Chicago, Illinois, and our stay-at-home shelter-in-place order has been extended through May 30th. That said, our thoughts and prayers and best wishes go out to all of you around the country and around the globe, wherever you may be catching this program. We know that some of you are suffering. We know that some of you are hurting financially. We know that some of you are unemployed. And God forbid, we know that some of you have probably been directly affected by COVID-19, either yourself, you've gotten sick, or someone in your family has. And just know that our thoughts and prayers are with you. So, with that said, I want to get going. We have a great show for you today. Coming up in a little while, Matt Perry, who is the head of talent at Peak Six Investments, will be here to share with us his company's philosophy on hiring in a time like this, and how he thinks the COVID-19 pandemic will actually affect hiring, affect talent acquisition processes for the foreseeable future. I have some thoughts on that, and I know he does as well. But before we get rolling for the show for the day, a few things I want to remind you of. First, you can connect with the show on Spotify, on Twitter, and on Instagram. The show is available on Spotify, Buzzsprout, and Soundcloud. And there's also a video version, which many of you are looking at right now, and that is available on YouTube. But if you don't know how to find us, you can just search Talent Unfiltered on any one of those platforms, and you will find the show. You can also email us at showinfo@talentunfiltered.com, and we'll make sure that the links to our social media and email are in the comments section down below. We hope that we connect with you soon. Now, if you dig what we do, then like, subscribe, share, and turn on the notification buttons on your platform of choice to make sure that you do not miss any new content coming from us. I will tell you that there's some great interviews out there with Lou Adler, who, if you're in recruiting and talent, you know who Lou is. A guy by the name of Hung Lee out of the UK, who owns a company called Workspace.io, and a bunch of other people. Kelly Keegan from the Built-In Companies, Marinas Van Driel from Aon. And we intend to have many, many, many more guests over the coming weeks and months. Now, I've been talking to you about a company called Tap Click Talk here in Chicago. It's run by a good buddy of mine named Andy Angelos, and he's put together a website called thebounceback.org. Now, the site is designed to help small business owners navigate this crazy slew of programs that are available from the federal government and the Small Business Administration, which can be a little bit confusing. We've heard reports about people not being able to get into the programs and big companies being able to take advantage of it, but smaller companies not so much. So Andy's platform helps you find programs in your area. It also helps you get to those programs' websites so you can apply. And then there are experts that they have on their team who are there to help you navigate which programs are appropriate for you. I would suggest if you are a small business owner that you get out and take a look at this. It is thebounceback.org. Again, that's thebounceback.org. Finally, my company, HireWorks, has put together a fundraising effort called the United We Win COVID-19 Relief Campaign. This is hosted on GoFundMe, and it benefits an organization called the Global Giving Foundation. Now, global giving typically helps charities and communities around the globe with access to programs and funding to help them battle catastrophes. Right now, they're taking a big chunk of their considerable bandwidth and pointing it at the COVID-19 campaign to help communities and first responders where they've been devastated by the disease. But we need your help to move this forward. These things are so difficult to get off the ground, particularly when you're doing it as a grassroots effort and a small company. We could really, really use your help. So what I need you to do is I need you to go to GoFundMe.com, search Donate United. Again, that's Donate United. When you do that, you're going to see our banner come up. Click on the HireWorks banner. Donate what you can. I don't care whether it's $5, $10, whatever it is, every little bit helps in an effort like this. If you can't donate, then we would ask that you share this with people in your personal social media networks so that we get that out there. Use the hashtag United We Win to make people aware of what it is we're trying to do. We would really appreciate your help. Every little bit helps. So again, go to GoFundMe.com, search Donate United, donate what you can, or share the information in your networks. Now, as I mentioned, our guest today is Matt Perry. He is the head of talent at Peak Six Investments. They are a great organization right here in Chicago. And when the pandemic hit, they were one of the few organizations that continued to hire full steam ahead. And I think they have a very unique philosophy about why they did that, why that was important. We're going to talk to Matt about that in just a second. They also have one of the best slogans in business that I've heard, and it is, "We are in the business of what ought to be." Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Matt Perry. And hey, Matt, thanks so much, man, for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Great to be here. I look forward to talking.
Yeah, no, it should be fun. I got to tell you, you look slightly different from the last time I saw you. It is I think everybody has a quarantine look. I'm going for Wolfman Jack. That's kind of and for those of you in the audience who are too young to know who Wolfman Jack is, look him up. You'll get it. But I'm kind of going for that Wolfman Jack look. And I noticed that you have what I would like to call the quar-a-mullet. Going on and back. It's
a bit of a hockey haircut, so it'd be, stick out of my helmet. I don't know. It's, it's a little tough without, proper care these days to go get a haircut. So
isn't that the weirdest thing? Like the things now that you took for granted before, now you'd be like, I'd give anything just to be able to go have a regular haircut.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to go get a Starbucks, just to leave my house and go into
Haven't been out to get a Starbucks?
No.
Oh, that's one of the few things I refuse to give up, man. I got one right down the road from me, and I literally get in the car and go over and I get my Starbucks. Now, I kind of lean away from them a little bit when I take the cup and I have the stuff to clean my hands, but
yeah, it's just not worth it. So I just, it'll be extra nice when I can stroll in there and pick
when this is over, we will have to get together for a cup of actual real coffee. So, I look forward to that time. Family safe? Everybody okay?
Everyone's doing great.
Okay, good. Okay, so let's get to it. As I was bringing you in, I was talking about how cool an organization I think Peak Six is and the things that you guys do. The slogan that you guys have, "We're in the business of what ought to be," I think is really good. And I think that plays nicely into what is going on right now. One of the things that I like the most about what you guys are doing is the fact that you've kept hiring at full speed throughout this entire situation. And you found it important to do that. I want to spend a little time about, number one, why you guys thought it was important to keep right on going, not just the business needs, but the message that maybe that sent to the community, I think is very, very important. And secondly, talk to me about how your leadership responded to this, because as a fellow talent guy, I get it. But from a leadership perspective, sometimes they can be a little more cautious, pump the brakes kind of guys. And I'd love to hear what the thought process was that you guys went through.
Yeah, I mean, I was very lucky to be with an organization that was very forward thinking and put some things into place at the time seemed inconsequential, but very quickly became kind of pillars to what we're doing. And that's, using technology to really drive the business. And part of that, we had leaders who looked at having the firm be able to work from home in different groups. And we did 50%, we did 75%, and then pretty quickly we were at 100% work from home pretty early in this crisis. And we and it took about 14 days for our engineers to, enable us to Zoom from home, to be connected, to, really to have our trading teams being able to operate from home. And we have not had one down day. And
wow,
we're lucky to have world-class engineers to make it happen.
Sure.
And, it's something where first and foremost was the safety and comfortability of the employees. And then we focused on the business. And, it's something that still drives what we're doing today. And I think it makes a huge impact on how the employees feel about the organization and what they're doing.
When you made that jump to remote, and I've talked to a number of people about this. We just had Kelly Keegan, who's the VP of people over at Built In Chicago, Built In Austin. They're all over the country now. But she and I were talking about that switch from being predominantly an on-site workforce to being fully remote. What are the challenges that you ran into in terms of that? I know you said you haven't had a down day yet, but it sounds to me like there may have been some down days in the beginning just because of the speed with which this happened. What have been the real challenges as it relates to talent over the course of this? Yeah,
I mean, it's you think about it, and I think from a talent perspective or just being an employee, you think that you're building the structure, creates the culture, and really it's the people who create the culture. And it's something that it is difficult to kind of portray to somebody when you're just able to do it over Zoom, over the phone. We've put some videos together. We've done some different things to really give people insights into what it's like to work at Peak Six and the companies that really make up Peak Six. And but the challenges, I mean, it's not only making sure that everyone's engaged, and I'm sure you've done enough of these Zooms. It's exhausting to Zoom all day.
Can be.
It's a different. You can't have side conversations. You've got to really be zoned in and cued in to listen to what someone's talking about, and then there's that listening and not waiting to talk. So it's as I told my staff and the people I work with, I mean, you got to be able to take a step away. There's no bookends anymore on your day. So it's easy to start early and run late and do things on Sundays. I mean, it just, it's hard to know where you can, when and where
to draw the line, right?
Yeah. So,
it's interesting. I was having this conversation with somebody, and then I did what I called leveraging the 4Ds podcast a week or so ago, and we were talking, or 2 weeks ago, and I was talking about this interaction right here, because I do think that this will be one of the holdovers from the COVID-19 experience that we're all going through. I think people who get really, really good at this do have a leg up. They do have an advantage. And what I tried to relay to people in giving tips about how to navigate this today, it's not that you need to do what I do here, where you have like a set and lights and all the other stuff, because this is specifically for the podcast. But you do need to think about what you're doing. And you're right, it does require more energy because you don't have some of the non-auditory cues, right? You don't have some of the body language cues that you get with some people. And a lot of times, and I don't know if this has happened to you yet or not, but you'll be having a conversation and the person on the other end won't turn on their camera because they're at home in their jammies, right? They don't want anybody to see them. And so I often wonder why we're even doing Zoom. Why didn't I just pick up the phone and call you? You know what I mean? So I don't know if you guys have had that challenge yet or not.
No, I mean, I think it's a challenge for everybody, and there's different etiquette involved with being on Zooms or video conference, whatever
Sure.
technology you're using. But especially for candidates, it's really trying to I don't want to say coach them through it, but being able to extract the information you want when there's other things going on. The dogs are barking, kids are playing. Somebody's opening the door. There's all sorts of issues, and
Right.
even with our staff and stuff, it's a positive when your kids hop on the camera or the dog jumps in your lap
For
or
sure.
the doorbell rings. It's called life, and
Yeah.
it kind of brings everybody back to reality. So
It's definitely a different work from home experience than I think most of us are used to. I've always kind of had a remote component to whatever I've done, whether I was consulting or whether I was leading a team or whatever. Recently, we haven't had an office per se. I mean, we keep a space, but we're not there a lot, right? Because most of our people are on site at client sites. And so we've adjusted to this, but there are so many companies out there that I don't think are agile enough, and they've had to embrace this whole kind of brave new world about how they're going to proceed forward in business, how they're going to navigate this. Which brings me to a question for you. So, as a talent team, especially internally, there's a whole bunch more that goes on than just being able to find talent. There's a whole process, right up to the time that that person's onboarded. I would imagine onboarding is a challenge. Walk me through some of the things that you guys have had to prepare candidates for that weren't even really an issue for you prior
yeah,
to this.
I mean, it's the big thing for me, and what we keep preaching is just over communicate with the candidates. Let them know what the experience is going to be. Let them know how to prepare for it. Onboarding somebody remotely, can feel, the last thing we want to do is have somebody feel like they're on an island, by themselves. And so big thing for us is making sure that first day works like clockwork, same way that it does when they're on site. Everyone's queued up, ready to go. If there's a glitch, we've got backups. So it's a quick transition. It's almost as though they don't even feel any problems. And truthfully, it's been relatively, or I should say almost completely smooth process. The only issues that we have sometimes are with technology, getting computers, getting, hardware that this day and age with shipping and logistics and
Sure.
all of that can be tough. And I think some companies have been hoarding computers, similar to toilet paper. So,
So we got,
I don't, yeah,
really,
so
I mean,
that's really the
do you
only
really
pain
think
point.
that's
So
happening? Do you really think
what?
people are hoarding them?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think when this initially kicked off, I think some people went out there and put some orders in, and
Yeah.
hey, good for them. But
Yeah.
the only hiccup we've had is asking people to work from a VPN in from a personal computer
Sure.
until we could get them a
That seems to be a
laptop.
big challenge for a lot of people, right? Is that
Mhm.
access to their internal systems, right? A lot of people weren't prepared for
Yeah,
that. And
again, knock on wood. I mean, we've had we have world-class engineers that had us from Jump Street perfectly going and VPNing in, and think about it, between 10 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, everybody in the world is Zooming and
yep,
or video conferencing or doing something that is
yep.
just such a constraint on the internet. Not to mention all your all the kids at home wanting to stream and watch
Hmm.
movies, and I mean it's just So
It's crazy. I mean, if you think about it, not only is it not a typical remote experience, but the drain on the infrastructure, what you're
hmm
talking about, I see it in my own personal use of the internet, right?
hmm
How things lag, things drag. The taping quality, because we tape our interviews here on Zoom, the taping quality today isn't what it was before, right? Because you'll get a lot of lags and jumps and bumps over the course of this. And that's, I look at it this way, if it happens to CNN and Fox and CBS and all of those other ones, I'm not going to be so upset when it happens to my little bitty tiny podcast here. I want to move on here. So I think you're a leader that typically, in our interactions at least, seems to have his finger on the pulse of what's going on in the market. And I'm sure that you have friends who are leaders in other companies, TA leaders in other companies. In your opinion, what should people knowing what you know about the market the way it was before COVID and how it is now, what do you think people ought to be focusing on as talent leaders in order to maximize and leverage this in some way to come out of this with a positive that's greater than, wow, I got to work at home for 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks, whatever it was?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the reliance on technology and making sure that you've got processes that can work, whether you're in the office, whether you're work from home, and that there's an experience there that is a positive one for candidates, for hiring managers, for division leaders. It's something that we've encountered that it has to be a white glove experience, and things break, things have to get rescheduled. All these things can occur, but making sure that we're communicating, we're engaging with the candidates and all the participants. The other thing too is feedback. Really getting in front of people and talking about feedback and not just putting it into a system. There's a lot of discussion that goes into hiring somebody, and this day and age, it's not every discussion isn't a hole-in-one. You're not always going to hire that person right away.
Sure.
For a given role. It might be a little later, and that experience that they have initially is going to be something that will either win the day or be an obstacle in the future that you got to overcome. So
yeah, I'm not a big Reddit guy, but I do get involved, and there's a couple of subreddits around recruiting that are out there that I think are kind of interesting, 8 or 10,000 members, something like that. And one of the questions you talked about, feedback. One of the questions was, how do I hold managers accountable for feedback in this kind of an environment? How do I get them to be things they weren't when we were all in the same place, right? And I think those are the challenges that people are running into. Any thoughts about that? Like, is it easier to hold your managers accountable now because they're going to be online, they're going to be looking at Slack, or they're going to be looking at this, and there isn't some meeting that's going to divert their attention to another part of the building? Oops, I forgot my phone, that kind of thing. Do you find it easier or harder?
I think it's about the same. I mean, you're constantly chasing, I think, as a talent acquisition person, because you have to peel the onion every time you get feedback. You can't assume you understand what the surrounding information is around that feedback. And as a recruiter, you're constantly adjusting the target, and adjusting, how you're going after those people, or skill sets that you need. And with managers, a simple statement can carry so much weight and information that could help you find the right, the ultimate talent that they're looking for. So,
yep.
My big thing is I just push on them and say, look, the more you give me, the better we're going to get at finding the right person. So that extra, 2 to 3 minutes that it's going to take you to provide that is gold.
Yeah, we whenever I'm on a client site and they're having process issues, I always try to hold people's feet to the fire on both sides of that equation, right? So there's always these internal SLAs that we have about expectations around feedback. And when somebody deviates from them, even if it's me, I expect somebody, to say something regarding that. One other thing I brought up, you talked about the experience of candidates. And I want to dive into this for just a second. You talked about the experience of candidates, giving them lavish feedback. What has the experience been like for your employees, your team members, and Peak Six as a whole? Because, I've had a couple of guests where we've talked about the psychological impacts of being remote like this and disconnected. Even though I can see you and we're talking right now, there's still a disconnect in terms of what we've grown accustomed to. And certain organizations are doing really interesting things to help alleviate that. What's Peak Six doing to kind of keep people engaged and let them know that they're not alone?
Yeah, I mean, it's, I think there's definitely a psychological effect, both positive and negative. I mean, I think you learn a lot about yourself when you're work from home, and but you also learn a lot about your team. I think my recruiting team and the the organizations that make up Peak Six have grown a lot closer. I think that can happen in, when there's a crisis, people either come together,
Sure.
and it's happened. What we've done, we have a lot of impromptu meetings where you can kind of jump in or jump out. It's actually recommended or viewed that you can talk about things other than work. What's going on at home? Did you make a cool meal? Did you, any experience that just gets people to share and engage. We did a cooped up concert last week, we call them.
Very cool. What is that? What is that?
So we were lucky enough that I've got an executive assistant who previously worked in the music industry. And so she and I were talking, and I said, gosh, it'd be really cool if we could get one of the, music's a very big part of Peak Six. We do a lot with musicians around our holiday parties and different things. And so she reached out to some musicians who, believe it or not, are all sitting at home just dying to play for somebody right now. And and so we put 300 people on a Zoom and had a concert and a little Q&A. I mean, that was fun. We've done, obviously there's always happy hours. We've done categories. We've done, just anything that breaks the monotony of, of being alone. And for the concerts, like, I'll have my kids jump on camera and dance and hang out.
Awesome.
Just
awesome.
Sort of real. The other real cool thing is we'll have meetings, and at the end, we got all of our executives, and we always ask kind of a quarantine question. Like, what are you doing? Have you picked up a hobby? Have you, just anything that makes people more human? Makes it easier to connect with somebody when you're just not talking X's and O's or
it's
stuff.
Sometimes just being so focused on the playbook of how you're going to get business done is counterproductive, right? I mean, I have a lot of conversations normally when, you've been, for full disclosure, you've been a client of mine before. And, and I think sometimes it's very easy to get put into a role where you are client and service provider or whatever, right? And I think in times like this, you just need to step back and be a human. And I've had conversations where I have virtual coffee with people who've been clients before, maybe never been a client. I'd love them to be a client, whatever the case may be, right? But just being able to connect at some level as a human being. And I think that goes a long way, right? For people to figure out that you're actually more than just a biz dev person or a consultant or whatever. And I think those are the kinds of relationships that, that people tend to remember. Let me ask you this. I've got this is a two-part question. The first is, and it's kind of a practical question, practical advice for leaders. All right. How can they better manage their teams remotely? That's part one. So this is for leaders. How would you suggest, what are some of the tricks that you've learned for them to better manage their teams remotely as we're going through this, and maybe even beyond, as I think this could be part of the new norm, right? That there are a lot of people who work remotely.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was interesting when this thing first, when we first got home, if you will, and we're kind of getting into our early cadence that first week. I had a team check-in, 3 times a week, and we kind of bounce in and talk about whatever. And we were, people were discussing home life and whatever. And I said, and I shared that I was actually a little concerned, that there was a lot of things happening in the world that were, something to be fearful for and prepare, but hope for the best, but plan for the worst type of scenario. And, I kind of let my guard down, was very humanistic about what my concerns were as just a father, just a regular person, and not to say I'm not a regular person at work, but there's there's probably work mat and there's a home mat, and one of my staff reached out to me right after the call via text and just said, hey, thanks for being real and talking about what you're afraid of and what you're thinking about. And, it seemed like kind of a throwaway thing at the time, but it really kind of taught me that I think as a leader, you've got to be able to peel back this persona of knowing all the, knowing everything and not being afraid of anything, and actually be humanistic and share with people, what you think.
No, I agree, man. I think being vulnerability is one of those traits of a leader that I think so often. You've had guys like this. I've had guys like this who have been our bosses or an investor or whatever, who have said, or who have a feeling that level of vulnerability or that level of openness somehow makes you weaker. and gives you an inability to drive home the things that need to be driven home when you have things you have to produce, right? I think it actually works the opposite. I think you tend to pick up so much credibility when you are real, when you're transparent, when you're vulnerable. And I think your staff ends up appreciating that. So I'm really glad that you shared that. So let me ask you this now, and then this is the second part of that question. So we're thinking about it as leaders. We want to be vulnerable. We want to be transparent. We want to be open, honest, and real. Put yourself in the shoes of being a team member, right? What is a thing, or what is the thing that frontline recruiters need to be sensitive to about how best to help their leaders achieve those goals in this kind of, work, life, home, work, remote balance kind of things? What are the things that frontline recruiter needs to keep in the back of their mind, or that frontline coordinator needs to keep in the back of their mind as they're helping their leadership team and their other team members kind of navigate this time?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot about communication and setting expectations, and being able to say, when there's difficulties, giving the bad news along with the good, and I think it's also really having to be a lighthouse for those leaders, and pointing them in the right direction and giving them the industry, feedback, what's going on out there, what are we hearing? Because we're actually talking to candidates that, whether they're a fit for the role or not, you're always getting a little bit of, a nugget of information from them that,
Yep.
As recruiters, it's our job to be the subject matter experts for the areas we support. And, it's something that I think, not only do we have to give that communication, but it's like a leaky bucket. You just got to keep doing it. It's never enough. And truthfully, probably only 30% of what you say is heard anyway. So,
Yep.
That's what I would say.
Isn't it amazing? Mark Cuban, I heard him talk one time, and he said, I'm most interested in having employees and team members that make my life easier, right? That give me the information I need to make good decisions. And I try to apply that when I'm mentoring members on my team. I just had this conversation with a team member who I think does great work, works very, very hard. But from time to time, we pass like ships in the night on certain pieces of critical information. And we had a long conversation doing just what we're doing right now. And I think that we're now both on the same page. And it's part about that. It blends the vulnerability, the what I need to succeed, and how you succeeding and me succeeding at the same time is a good thing, right? I appreciate your feedback on that. Last thing that I want to touch on before we let you go. This has changed the dynamic of how we're going to do talent going forward, I think, in a lot of ways. I think remote work is going to be much more acceptable for recruiters. I think that you are going to find the recruiters who get better at this kind of an interview are going to be head and shoulders above everybody else. And I think that's probably true of business development people too, who are able to do this get better, or are head and shoulders above everybody else. In your mind, what are a couple of the things that you think COVID has changed that probably won't go back to the way they were pre-pandemic?
That's a long list. And
we only get two. That's the thing.
Yeah. I don't. I'm trying to put them in a stack rank here, but I think it goes back to having an office culture. I think that's going to go away. I don't see. I'm interested in how downtown is going to look with so many people, work from home, and it'll look like a movie set if you ask me. But it's cultures. Your culture is going to be more than the brick and mortar, the art, the look of an office. It's got to be about, it's always been about the people, but for some reason I think it got lost in in all these offices and all these looks and all this glass. When in reality, you could have an amazing office, but if you don't have the right people, it's going to fall flat. And so I think being able to curate your culture in a way that can be shown beyond the physical, and it's got to be able to be articulated by your recruiters. And I think that's something that recruiting is going to have to learn, is how to sell like the, and be able to not, I guess sell's not the right word, but be able to articulate what the culture of the company is and why somebody would want to work there.
Yeah, that's really interesting because we're doing a lot of work now because of what's going on with COVID. Some of our traditional lines of business have really, put the brakes on. There are places where we did business before where there just isn't as much opportunity as there was before. There's still opportunity out there. I don't want to paint a picture that everything is gloom and doom. Yes, the unemployment numbers are historical, but there's still opportunity to do some things out there. But I can tell you that one of the people, we're doing work in the transportation industry now. We've always done that, but we've really kind of turned our focus in that direction. And one of the people told us, one of the clients told us that their biggest turnaround in terms of success in recruiting was to be able to talk like an operations person rather than talk like a recruiter. And that was a huge deal. And it made a huge difference in terms of retention, because operations people communicate, as you were saying, they communicate that culture and what it's really like to be there in a much different way than a recruiter does. Sometimes people forget that recruiters are salespeople that sit inside of HR, right? Yeah. And that's really our function. And it sometimes works against us, I think.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there, and the fact that you don't want to sell everybody as a recruiter. There's some people are going to fit the dynamic of not only, skill sets are set that aside. Obviously you want to find the person who's got the skills
Sure.
you're looking for, but it's also a culture fit, and it's a mentality fit. And if you can't articulate what the mentality of the company is, then you're in a way misleading that prospect of that person. So, from a recruitment standpoint, you have to kind of be an evangelist and
Sure.
a salesperson in a weird dynamic. So
Sure. No, it's one of the reasons I enjoy working with you, is I think you and I think about this very similarly, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's about getting data. It's about understanding the data that you have and how you can use that to make better decisions, not only in terms of what levels of activity you need to generate hires, but also people data that allows you to make decisions about the right person, right? And that goes into assessments. It goes into the way you interview, the way you teach people to interview. There's a lot of stuff around that. Matt, I know we're running out of time, man. I really, really appreciate you taking time today. I really do. And I have to tell you, I am excited to see what the quar-a-mullet looks like when you get done here. Or did you say something about maybe you might have ordered clippers? I can't remember what you told me.
I did. I was
Okay.
a little late to the game, so I think Amazon's got me somewhere in May for my delivery.
Oh, in May. Oh, wow.
But maybe I'll just keep rocking it.
Just keep going, man. Just keep going.
It'll be
Kinda
business
go
up
with the
front
Joe-
and
yeah.
party in the rear.
Go with the whole Joe
so.
Dirt recruiter look, man. It's perfect.
I think it's good. If I can just twist it when I'm on the phone, that'll really
Exactly.
close the deal for people.
When you're nervous, right? When you're nervous.
Right.
Hey, man, I really appreciate it. I really do. And you're a good dude, and I have really been grateful to get to know you over the last
Well, it's
couple
been
of
fun
years.
talking to you, and I always like to hear what else is going on in the marketplace.
Yeah, there's always stuff going on.
If it wasn't for guys like you, we wouldn't know. So
That's not true.
Definitely
That's not true.
helpful.
There's better guys than me out there, but I just like to talk, and I have a nice set. So
you do.
That's kind of what it
good
comes
over there.
All right, brother. Thank you very much, man. I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon, okay?
Have a good one.
All right.
Bye.
Well, that's going to do it for us today. We want to thank Matt Perry again from Peak Six Investments for taking time to join us today. We greatly appreciate it. Now, if you like what we did and you want to stay up to date, then like, subscribe, and share on your platform of choice. You can also connect with me or the show on social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or you can find me on LinkedIn. Now, join us next Monday, May 4th, for another episode of Talent Unfiltered. Until then, stay safe.